I think it's safe to say Busch Gardens is one of the most beautiful parks I have ever been to. It's easily one of my favorites. Next year in 2020, Busch Gardens plans to open a first of its kind multi-launch coaster, Pantheon. When I first saw Pantheon, I was blown away by its theme, elements, and of course its triple launch switch track feature. If any park deserves a coaster like this, it's Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Coaster Theory. On today's episode, I will be sharing why Pantheon is brilliant. Before I go on with the video, today's shoutouts go to Riker the Mans and Corkscrew Coasters. If you want to get featured in my next video, then just comment something down below. If I like it, I'll be sure to put you at the beginning of next week's video. Do you remember when Busch Gardens Tampa announced Tigris and we all rolled our eyes because it would be the park's second triple launch coaster with one inversion? Well, in 2020, the same thing is happening up at Busch Gardens Williamsburg between Pantheon and Tempesto. However, Pantheon will have an extra launch and extra inversion. Although I do have an opinion on the park having two closely resembled coasters, for this video, scrap that. I want to tell you why Pantheon is a great investment for the park and why it will draw in a lot more crowds than we might think. Before I go more into Busch Gardens and Pantheon, we need to take a look at one of Busch Gardens' competitor parks, Kings Dominion. In the beginning of 2019, Kings Dominion made one of the worst choices they could have possibly made by choosing to remove their Intamin launch coaster, Volcano. Personally, I never got the chance to ride Volcano. I went to Kings Dominion 2 months after the announcement of its closure when they were already beginning to take it apart. I say this because I don't want to seem biased over Volcano's removal. I genuinely believe it was one of the worst choices the park could have made. I will get more into what I would have done later, but for now, just know that I don't approve of Volcano's closure. Now, why don't I? As many of you know, Volcano was the GP's favorite coaster, making it the most popular coaster at Kings Dominion. Even though Volcano had serious maintenance issues, I don't think it was the best to remove it. Now, why was it a bad idea to remove Volcano? Well, because the following year, Busch Gardens will open Pantheon. Just think about it. Kings Dominion removes one of their most popular attractions, Busch Gardens adds one of their most popular attractions, and all the people that miss Volcano, well, now they get a better version over at Busch Gardens. I don't think it could have worked any better for Busch Gardens. They didn't plan on Volcano's removal. All they wanted to do was add another launch coaster, and now they're going to get so much more attention because Kings Dominion chose to remove their best coaster. So, if I were Kings Dominion, what would I have done differently? I would have gotten back with Intamin to retrack Volcano with an all-new LSM launch system. Yes, LSMs are expensive, but you want to know what's even more expensive? Taking down the whole ride and replacing it with a new one. With the removal of Volcano, Kings Dominion is now down an elite launch coaster. They have Backlot Stunt Coaster and Flight of Fear, but I think some can argue Flight of Fear is becoming outdated with its old LIM launch system, and Backlot is just a family coaster. To make matters even better for Busch Gardens, what's gonna be replacing Volcano? A B&M wing coaster. Don't get me wrong. Wing coasters are GP crowd pleasers, and it's sure to bring in more guests until, get this, Busch Gardens adds a flying coaster. Now, I'm not certain Busch will add a flyer, but if they do, after Pantheon is the time to do it. Why would this be the perfect time, you might ask? Well, because when Kings Dominion gets their wing coaster, a flyer is gonna one-up it, and then Busch Gardens is still gonna be one step ahead because they have a launch coaster that Kings Dominion doesn't have. Again, don't get me wrong, I've wanted to see a wing coaster come to Kings Dominion for ages, but they've waited too long and now is not the time to do it. First, the park should focus on replacing Volcano with another launch coaster and put the wing coaster somewhere else. Looking at this from Busch Gardens' point of view, how can they go from a great park to an amazing park? I know I have a small fan base, but if anyone from Busch Gardens is watching this, please listen up because I'm about to tell you how you can always be one step ahead of Kings Dominion forever thanks to the removal of Volcano. Pantheon will open in 2020, and as I said, that is great considering the Volcano mishap. When Kings Dominion opens their wing coaster, this is what Busch should do. Add either a B&M flyer to match the wing, or add an Intamin hypercoaster. Why an Intamin hypercoaster, you might ask? Well, a major gap in King's Dominion's lineup is a hypercoaster. We know they will not get a B&M because Busch has Apollo. How could King's Dominion kill two birds with one stone? They can get an Intamin hyper, so it's not a B&M and it would compete with Pantheon. Pantheon is what's keeping Busch one step ahead. If King's Dominion can counter it, that's bad news for Busch. Some will argue Busch already has a hyper, why would they need a second? Well, it's not uncommon to see a park with more than one coaster over 200 feet. Considering the circumstances, I don't think it's a bad idea to add one soon. And besides, this Intamin hypercoaster would be drastically different from Apollo's Chariot. What would Busch do after the hyper? Easy. That's when you add the flyer. Let King's Dominion's wing go first and then one-up it with a better ride. When King's Dominion adds a wing, Busch Gardens will add a flyer to counter it. If King's Dominion adds a thrilling launch coaster, Pantheon will counter it, but Busch would still be one step ahead because of that hyper. If Busch adds the hyper, then there's no other place for King's Dominion left to go, and Busch Gardens will continue to grow. To answer my original question, Pantheon is brilliant because it gives Busch Gardens another thrilling launch coaster that King's Dominion doesn't have, so they already won up to them. Pantheon came at the best time possible, which is when there is no other thrilling launch coaster in the area. If you want to ride another big launch coaster, well, go to Busch Gardens. They got 3 of them, maybe soon to be a 4th. King's Dominion. How could this have been avoided? All you needed to do was get back with Intamin and retrack Volcano. Make sure to subscribe down below and turn on post notifications because on next week's Coaster Theory, we asked the question, will Cedar Fair work with Intamin again? Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed and want to see more just like it, click this playlist right here. If you want to subscribe to my channel, click my little logo right beneath me. I am your host, Zach from Theme Park Media, signing off, and I will catch you in the next one.